إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة كشف الله جل وعلا به الغمة تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Surely Allah is with those people who have taqwa, those people who keep their duties to Him. And He is with al-muhsinun, He is with the people who do good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with these people. He will help these people. He will support these people. He will see these people through difficulties. And many times in history, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown this to us. In many incidents and events that have happened in the past, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the people who have faith in Him. He is with the people who are sincere towards Him. He is with the people who keep their obligations to Him and stay away from His prohibitions. And He is with those people who do good deeds. And when we reflect upon this, especially during these times where the ummah is going through great difficulties, it gives us hope that we have the solution to our problems in front of us. The solution is here. And the solution is clear. But we have to implement that solution if we want the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Surely as Allah is with those people who keep their duties towards Him, and He is with those who do good. If we do this, we will have the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will be with us. And if Allah is with you, then no one can ever harm you or defeat you. One beautiful example in the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving victory to the people of taqwa and the people of ihsan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving victory to those who were sincere to Him, is the story of the army of Talut against the army of Jalut. And this story is mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. So many years after Musa alayhi salam, Bani Israel, they were going through a difficult time. They had become weak in their practice of the religion. They started disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They started becoming lax on the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused humiliation to descend upon these people, because they weren't keeping their duties towards Him. So what happened? They were humiliated. Their land was occupied by their enemies. They were kicked out of their homes, and they were separated from their families. Their children were enslaved. So they were going through a lot of difficulties, Bani Israel, at the hands of their enemies who were oppressing them. So Bani Israel, they complained to their prophet at that time. And their prophet at that time was the prophet Shamwil alayhi salam. They complained to him and they said, Ya Nabi Allah, O Prophet of Allah, appoint a king for us. Appoint a king for us, and under the banner of this king, we will fight against our enemies. We will fight against our enemies, and we will take our rights back from our enemies. So the Prophet Shamwil alayhi salam, he knew the nature of these people. He knew that they like to talk, but when the time for action comes, that they turned back on their heels. So he said to them, look, if Allah ordains this, you are asking for the permission to fight against your enemies. Let's say Allah gives you this permission, and He obligates you to fight against your oppressors. Perhaps then when the obligation comes, you will change your mind and you will say, never mind, and you will try to turn back on your heels. Perhaps this is going to happen. Look, he knew the nature of these people. But they said to him, قَالُوا وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُقَاتِلَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا وَأَبْنَائِنَا. They said to him, how can we not fight in the way of Allah? Of course we will fight. Just appoint a king for us who will lead us, and of course we will fight. How can we not fight when we have been expelled from our homes, when our children have been taken away from us, we have been separated from our families, all this oppression is going on? How can we not fight? Of course we will fight. So these were their words. But then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them what they were asking for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them this permission to fight. What happened? فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالِ تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ. When fighting became obligatory upon them, they turned away, they ran away. Except for a few of them, those few that were sincere, they stayed on the right path and they said that they are still willing to fight. But only a few of them. The majority of them turned back on their heels and they ran away. Now, these people, they were asking for a king. They wanted a king who would lead them into battle. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the Prophet Shamuel alayhi salam to appoint a man named Talut as the king of Bani Israel. They're asking for a king. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, He will give them a king. And He tells His Prophet Shamuel alayhi salam, the king of Bani Israel is going to be Talut. So Shamuel alayhi salam, he asks Allah, Ya Allah, I don't know Talut, I have never seen him before, and he has not seen me, so how will I know him? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reassures Shamuel that He will make their paths cross, and He will allow Shamuel to recognize Talut. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will facilitate this meeting, and He will also facilitate the recognition. Now Talut, this man whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen to become the king of Bani Israel, he was a simple man. He was a man of righteousness, he was a man of piety, but he was a simple man. And he was not rich, and he did not have a high status in society. He worked with his father on their farm in one of the valleys, in one of the villages. So he had a simple life working with his father on their farm. So one day, one of the donkeys from the farm escaped. It got lost and it wandered off. So Talut took a servant and they went off in search of this donkey. So they traveled out of their village and they ended up in one of the neighboring cities. And they still couldn't find the donkey. So Talut, he says to his servant, let's just go back. My father is going to get worried. It's just one donkey. Let's just cut our losses. Let's just go back. And the servant of Talut says, okay, but we have ended up in the land of the Prophet of Allah, Shamuel alayhi salam. We're in that land. We're in his city right now. So perhaps as long as we're here, as long as we've already ended up here, we can meet him and maybe he can help us with this. He's a Prophet of Allah. We can tell him what our problem is and perhaps he can give us some guidance and he can give us some help. So Talut, he agrees to this suggestion. And they decide to stay in that city and meet the Prophet, Shamuel alayhi salam. So they see two girls who are carrying some water, and they ask these girls, where can we meet the Prophet of Allah? Where can we see Shamuel alayhi salam? So the girls tell them that, see that mountain over there? The people who are waiting on that mountain, they are waiting for the Prophet of Allah to come there, and they are going to meet with him over there. So you can go to that mountain. So Talut and his servant, they go to that mountain to meet the Prophet of Allah, Shamuil alayhi salam. And finally, they meet. And when they see each other, their souls connected. Shamuil alayhi salam knew, this is Talut, this is the man that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told me to appoint as the king of Bani Israel. And Talut, seeing Shamuil, he saw his face and he knew this is a prophet of Allah. You can see from his face that this is a prophet of Allah. So Talut, he tells Shamuil alayhi salam his problem. He says, we had a donkey, the donkey wandered off from our farm, and maybe you can help us. What can we do to find it? And Shamuil alayhi salam tells Talut, don't worry about your donkey. Your donkey is on its way back to your father's farm. Don't worry about that. Your donkey is on its way back to your father's farm. But I have something much more important that I need to talk to you about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained that you should be the king of Bani Israel. So Talut is surprised at this. A simple guy who works with his father on his farm, doesn't have a high position in society, is not rich, is not famous, and he's going to become the king of Bani Israel. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wallahu yu'ti mulkahu man yasha. Allah gives the kingdom to whomever He wants. Allah gives His kingdom to whomever He wants. So Talut was chosen to be the king of Bani Israel. Now Shamuil alayhi salam, he gathers Bani Israel and he tells them, Inna Allah qad ba'atha lakum Talut malika. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained Talut to be your king. He tells this to Bani Israel. Bani Israel were the ones who were asking him, appoint a king for us. Now they got what they were asking for. Inna Allah qad ba'atha lakum Talut malika. Allah has chosen Talut to be your king. But were Bani Israel satisfied with this? They were not satisfied. They said, أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. They actually argued with their prophet. This was the way of Bani Israel. And if you read the Quran and you see the stories of Bani Israel, you will see that this was their way with their prophets. They would always try to argue with their prophets. They would not say سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. Rather, they would try to get out of whatever their prophets were ordering them to do. So they said to Shamuil alayhi salam, أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا. How can Talut have the kingdom over us? وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ. And we have more right to the kingdom than him. He is just a simple guy. وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. And he has not even been given much wealth. He's not rich. How can he be the king? So they connected being rich to being the king. That if you're not rich, you cannot be a king. But what does this have to do with leadership? So Shamuil alayhi salam, he replied to these people, قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاهُ عَلَيْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has raised him above you. He has appointed him in this position above you. وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has increased him in terms of his physical strength and in terms of his knowledge. He is intelligent, he has been given wisdom by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this makes him a capable leader. Also, he has been given physical strength, which is a quality that is necessary in a good leader as well. So his mind is strong and his body is strong. It doesn't matter that he's not rich. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him for this position. Now, because many of these people from Bani Israel, they were not happy with Talut being appointed as their king, a number of them decided not to join this army. So in the beginning they asked Shamuil, give us a king and we will fight. When fighting became obligatory upon them, most of them turned away and only a few remained. Now out of those few, when Talut became their king, out of those few, a number of them actually also ran away. So now the army is just getting smaller and smaller. So now Talut takes over this army, and alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him knowledge, He has given him wisdom, He has given him good ability to lead. So Talut organizes the army. And Shamuil alayhi salam tells Bani Israel that the sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this man, Talut, is your king, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send you a sign. If you're not happy with it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send you a sign. And that sign is, إِنَّ آيَةَ مُلْكِهِ أَن يَأْتِيَكُمُ التَّابُوتُ فِيهِ سَكِينَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَبَقِيَّةٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ آلُ مُوسَى وَآلُ هَارُونَ تَحْمِلُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them a clear sign. These people are stubborn and they don't want to accept, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His mercy, He's giving them a clear sign. This sign is a special box that had some of the remnants of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam. And some of the Mufassirin have mentioned that there were actually pieces of the tablets that were given to Musa alayhi salam in that box. The tablets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Musa alayhi salam, some pieces, some remnants of those tablets were in that box. Also the asa, the stick of Musa alayhi salam, it was in that box. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this box as التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم. With that box there is a peace and tranquility that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also some of the remnants of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam. And this box will come to you carried by the angels. تحمله الملائكة. What more of a sign do you need than this? إن في ذلك لآية لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. And surely in this there is a sign for you if you are truly believers. If someone is truly a believer and they see such a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will have no excuse to turn back. So now the army of Talut, it has become somewhat small. And Talut, while he's organizing the army, he makes it even smaller because he wants to make sure that only the dedicated, sincere, focused people are with him to face the enemy. We cannot have any half-hearted people with us. Everyone with us has to be 100% in. So he tells the people who have joined to fight with him, he says, anyone who has just gotten married, anyone who is newly married, I don't need you in my army. Because he knows a person who is newly married is going to be attached to his wife. He won't want to leave his wife. So his heart won't be 100% in. He says, anyone who is newly married, we don't need you. Thank you. Anyone who is in the process of building a house, that you have started building a house and you haven't finished building it yet, we don't need you either. Because he knows that these people are going to be thinking about, okay, we're constructing our house, we need to finish constructing our house. So basically anyone whose mind can be distracted in any way from this sublime goal of defeating the enemy, we don't want you as part of our army. So then a number of people were caused to leave this army as well. So you see how it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller? And it's not done yet. Then Talut, when it's time to move forward, when it's time to march forward towards the enemy, Talut, he gives another instruction to his people. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِنَهَرٍ فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ. Another test, and that's going to wipe out more people from the army. He says, as we are marching towards the enemy, we're going to pass by a river. And the army, they're marching, of course they're thirsty. They want to drink. So he says, we're going to pass by a river. Whoever drinks from that river, you are not from me. You're not part of this army. Go home. If anyone drinks from the river, they're not welcome to continue with the army. But whoever refrains, whoever has the patience and the discipline to not drink from that water, except you're allowed to drink just a handful. Just enough to basically wet your mouth. Just drink one handful of water, that's enough. But no more than that. And if you drink more than that, then you're not part of the army anymore. Look what Talut is doing here. He's making sure that the people who are with him in this army, that they have discipline. When you're fighting against an enemy, you need to have discipline. If you can't even have enough discipline to stay away from water when you're thirsty, how are you going to have enough discipline to fight against your enemy? So he's purifying the ranks, making sure that everyone who is with them is sincere, is strong, is dedicated, is focused, and is disciplined. So they pass by the river. They're thirsty. So what happens? What happens when they pass by the river? فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. That most of them, they drank the water from that river. They continued to drink and drink and drink, the majority of them. And only a few of them did not drink more than they were allowed to drink. Only a few of them. So now, the army becomes even smaller. Look how this army, the size of this army keeps decreasing. First of all, it was a huge army with tens of thousands of people saying that they're going to fight. But then when fighting became ordained upon them, most of them ran away. Then when Talut became their king, more of them ran away. Then Talut cleared more people. By seeing those whose heart were not fully in this, he cleared them away as well. Then from those people who were left over, those who drank more than they were supposed to drink from the river, they were cleared out as well. So look at this. It keeps going smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Now by this stage, after crossing the river, how many people were left in the army of Talut? There were only 313 people left. 313 people to face the enemy. And what does this number remind you of, 313? It's the same number as the participants in the Battle of Badr. And the Battle of Badr is a similar story to this, where a small group defeated a large, more powerful group with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these 313 people, they are the cream of the crop. They have proven their sincerity and their dedication. And when it comes time for them to face the enemy, they come face to face with the enemy forces, and the enemy forces are led by a man named Jalut. Jalut is very big, he's like a giant, he's very strong, he's known as a fierce warrior. They face their enemies, and the enemies are much greater than them in number. The enemies are better equipped, the enemies have more weapons, the enemies have better armor. So some of these people from the side of Talut, when they see the army of Jalut, they get scared when they see it with their eyes, what they're going to face. They said, قَالُوا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا الْيَوْمَ بِجَالُوتَ وَجُنُودِهِ, that we will not have the power today to overcome Jalut and his army. Look at this. Look at us and look at them. But then some of the people of strong iman who were from amongst the army of Talut, they said, قال الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو الله كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله والله مع الصابرين. They reminded their brothers, like, look, it has happened in the past. How many times has it happened before that a small group was able to defeat a much larger group? This is not the first time. This has happened before by the permission of Allah, bi'idhnillah. So we can do it as well, bi'idhnillah, by the permission of Allah. Wallahu ma'as sabirin. And Allah is with those people who are patient. So now the time for fighting started. And before the fighting started, the army of Talut, they made dua. قالوا ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. They made this beautiful dua that showed their trust and reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, give us patience. We will need this patience when we are fighting this enemy. And keep our feet firm. Ya Allah, give us this courage, this bravery, this boldness to stay firm when we are fighting our enemy. وَانصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ, and give us victory over the disbelievers. So before the fighting started, it was a common practice that before both sides actually engaged in the battle, there would be one-on-one duels. So one person from one army would fight one person from the other army, and both sides would just watch. So there would be these one-on-one mubarazat, or these duels. So Jalut himself, the commander of the disbelieving army, he comes out and he challenges Bani Israel, send one person to fight me personally. Send one person out and I will duel with him. So Jalut is huge, he's a giant, and he has his armor, he has his weapon, a fierce warrior. So Talut asks his people, who is going to go and fight Jalut? And nobody says anything except one young man, and this young man's name is Dawood. And later on, Dawood would become a great prophet of Allah. At this time, he was a young man, Dawood alayhi salam. He says, I will fight him. Now Dawood alayhi salam, he was young, his body was not strong, And there was a big difference in his physical stature with the physical stature of Jalut. So Talut kind of ignored Dawood alayhi salam, and he said, is there anyone who will fight Jalut? Nobody answered except Dawood. Dawood said, I will fight him. Talut kind of ignored it again. Is there anyone who will fight Jalut? Dawood again, I will fight him. So Talut finally says, okay, if you're sure you can do it, go ahead and fight him. And Talut gives him armor, he gives him a helmet, and he gives him a sword. Dawood alayhi salam puts on this armor and this helmet and this sword, and he can't walk. It's so heavy for him. It's difficult for him to walk with all of this armor and even with this sword. So he takes all of it off. He takes off his armor, takes off the helmet, leaves the sword, and he carries with him the weapon that he has good experience with. That's a slingshot. So he takes a few stones, he takes his slingshot with him, and he faces Jalut. Jalut sees him, and he says, you're going to fight me? You're too small and too weak. If I fight you, your body is going to become food for the wild animals and for the vultures. And Dawood alayhi salam very confidently and bravely, he says, no, it's your body that's going to become food for the wild animals and the vultures. So the fighting begins, and Dawood alayhi salam aims his slingshot with a stone, and the stone hits Jalut right on his forehead. And Jalut falls down to the ground. So Dawood alayhi salam, he defeated the commander of the enemy forces before the fighting even started. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. Dawood alayhi salam, he killed Jalut. When their commander was killed, even before the fighting started, they became demoralized. Like, look, our commander is gone and we haven't even started the fight. So they lost all of their focus, and they started running away from the battlefield. And the soldiers of Bani Israel, the army of Talut, they followed them and they defeated them. Walhamdulillah. And Dawood alayhi salam would later on be honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with becoming a king and a prophet. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. That Dawood, he killed Jalut, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Dawood alayhi salam the kingdom, and he gave him wisdom, he made him a prophet, and he gave him knowledge. So this is the story of the army of Talut against the army of Jalut, and it just shows that even if your numbers are small, if your people are sincere, if they are dedicated, if they are focused, if they keep their duty towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they keep their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you will be victorious. There is no doubt about it. إِن يَنصُرْكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا غَالِبَ لَكُمْ. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you, then no one can defeat you. And this story is a beautiful example of that. And this is the way of Allah. This is the sunnah of Allah. وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. And you will never find any change to the way of Allah, to the sunnah of Allah. So we just need to do what they did, and we will be victorious as they were victorious by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from these lessons, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to implement these lessons in our lives. Ameen. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بهدي سيد المرسلين. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله على إحسانه والشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الداعي إلى رضوانه أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, from the story of the army of Talut against the army of Jalut, there are many lessons that we can take. The first lesson is that disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leads to humiliation. Why were Bani Israel in this situation in the first place, where they were oppressed and they were humiliated? Because they abandoned the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That as time passed, they left their commitment and their dedication to follow the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed their situation as well. And they had to live under oppression and humility. So disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leads to humiliation. The second lesson we can learn here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favors whomever He wills. Allah chooses whomever He wills, and He favors whomever He wills over whomever He wills. Talut He was not rich, he was not famous, he didn't have much of a status in society. He was just a man who worked with his father on a farm, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him to be the king of Bani Israel. Allah chooses whomever He wants, for whatever He wants. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. This is the fadl, this is the favor of Allah, and He gives it to whomever He wills. Also, we can learn from this story that tests will come in life that will separate sincere people from insincere people. Thousands of people told the Prophet of Allah, Shamuil alayhi salam, that we are ready to fight. And in the end, those tens of thousands of people, how many did they become in the end when the time for the fight really came? There were only 313. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will give these tests, and these tests separate the sincere from the insincere. Those who are sincere will always keep their connection towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will always call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory. And the last lesson that we learn from this story is that if we rectify our situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rectify our situation. If we rectify ourselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rectify our condition. These people from Bani Israel, they were living under humiliation and oppression, but they rectified themselves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifted that humiliation from them and gave them victory. So if we are living under difficulty and humiliation, what is the solution? Turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will lift that humiliation from you. Inna Allaha ma'al ladhina attaqaw wal ladhina hum muhsinun. Surely Allah is with those people who keep their duties towards Him, who have taqwa of Him, and He is with those who do good work. And if Allah is with you, then you have it made. Then you have won. You have been victorious if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all from the victorious ones. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift the humiliation from this ummah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be with us at all times. Ameen. هذا وصلوا وسلموا رحمكم الله على الرسول المجتبى والنبي المصطفى كما أمركم بذلك ربكم جل وعلا فقال عز من قائل إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد بن عبد الله وارض اللهم عن خلفائه الراشدين وعن الصحابة أجمعين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا اعتدلوا سدوا الخلل. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for our dear respected Imam Shaykh Ahson Syed for beautiful khutbah. Jazakallah khairan. Brother and sister, there is someone donated food for you outside the masjid, is on the maybe on the front of the masjid is a truck. Please go and grab your box, each of them, each box for one person, and make a dua for this person who donated this food for you. Second thing, I would like to remind myself and you to do your sadaqat and tabarru'at at this masjid. We need your help to pay some of the bill. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.